BookTube. How you doing? It's Peg. I'm at the History Shelf. I'm here today, a day late for Tag Tuesday, but I'm very excited to do this tag that I was tagged in, or tagged by Bill Ruttenberg, the Civil War book tag. I apologize for being late, Bill, but better late than never. And I've got a lot of really cool books to show off here, and I hope that they spark some interest amongst some of you who enjoy Civil War and history in general. So let's just dive right in, shall we? Question number 1 is, what is the best book you have read on the build-up to the American Civil War? Well, I'm going to show you a couple books, and just because they were on my shelf and I had something to say about each one. This first book is the first volume in a 2-volume work by historian William W. Freeling, and that is The Road to Disunion, Secessionists at Bay, 1776 to 1854. I have the second volume. It's upstairs. I had to have Martine help me carry down all these different books that are in the upstairs library room. So I just didn't grab the second volume. But the second volume is Secessionists Triumphant, 1854 to 1861. This is a very, as you can see, it's a really chunkster of a book. And it takes things all the way back to the founding. And gives you the broad sweep, in that the argument is the road to disunion really began, obviously, when the country was formed. So the road to disunion, I would highly recommend this in the second volume. I highly recommend you guys check out. Another book that I heartily enjoyed, and it was assigned as a textbook in one of my classes, I think for the antebellum period. And this was by a professor, a historian I enjoy very much. I own 2 of her books. The other book I have is her work on appomattox. And she has a brand new book out called Armies of Deliverance. I'm sure many of you who follow Civil War history and new releases have heard of it, and I do want to get that book very soon. This is Elizabeth R. Varon, and this was her book, Disunion, The Coming of the American Civil War, 1789 to 1859. And on the cover is a picture of the burning of Pennsylvania Hall. She had some really riveting stories in here. And Pennsylvania Hall was where the new building, it was the new building for the Abolition Society. And it was set on fire by the protesters that were not on board with abolition. But there were some beautiful stories in here about just how fierce these abolitionists were, especially the women, both the white women and the African American women, who were just united in their resolve, and they were so courageous. There's a scene where 2 of the women left the building before it was about to be set fire, I believe, and they walked out arm in arm, which was unheard of in that day, to show that type of equality, that they looked at each other. The white woman and the African American woman just walked out arm in arm, and it's a great story, and this is a great book. So if anyone is interested in that, it's put out by University of North Carolina Press. They have fabulous, fabulous books on Civil War history. Okay, moving on. What is the best single volume history that you have read on the American Civil War? Well, that's easy. That is, I think, the same answer that Bill gave, and that is James McPherson's The Battle Cry of Freedom. I don't have that to show you right now because I read it so long ago. I think it came out when I was in my mid-teens. And so I think it's in storage somewhere or donated. I need to get my hands on maybe a nice, maybe an anniversary copy or something. It's been around for a while, and it's considered a classic. Most people talk about this book anytime that they talk about just the grand sweep in 1-volume history. I think there was another book that I also found to be really, really good, and it was Russell Weigley. Hang on, I'm just going to look this up real quick for you guys. He had a 1-volume history that was also, I thought, very well done, and it was more of a recent release. pulling this up right now. Yes, it's called A Great Civil War, A Military and Political History, 1861 to 1865, by Russell F. Weigley, Weigley. Then that came out in, let's see, the hardcover, I think 2000. It came out in 2000. Okay. That was a single volume history. I read that, loved it. I don't know where I have it. I think it's in storage here in Colorado, probably in my garage, or in one of my other boxes. But anyway, definitely go with McPherson first. And if you are really into one volume histories, check out Weigley's A Great Civil War. All right, let's move on. So, question number 3 is, what is the best series or multi-volume set of books on the American Civil War that you have read? That was a no-brainer for me. And you know I had to bring this downstairs. Can you guess? This is Shelby Foote's The Civil War Narrative, all 3 volumes. These are not the books I originally read. I read them, I think, in paperback from either the library or my mom bought me some copies, because at the time I heard about Shelby Foote was from the Ken Burns Civil War documentary, and I fell in love with his syrupy, sweet southern voice, the southern accent, and just decided then and there, I was like, I have to read everything I can on the Civil War. The Civil War documentary, like I said in another video on top 5 best documentaries, it changed my life. It put me on the course of loving history. And the Civil War was my entry into all things history. For a while, the only thing I read was Civil War history. But then I eventually branched out. And as you can see behind me and everywhere else, I just have a global interest in history. But the Civil War is what made me go down that road. So I'm very thankful and grateful to that documentary and Shelby Foote, and these are fantastic books that I do want to reread again. I read them a while ago, but by far my favorite set. Yes?
That's how we met.
What?
That's how we met. Civil War. Talking about Civil
War.
Oh,
yes. One of the ways that Martine and I got to know each other and met was through our
love of Sullivan.
Yeah, our love of the Sullivan-Ballou letter. We both mentioned it in an email or something. And we both knew what the other was talking about. So it was just like, well, there you have it. That's how you write a good letter. You study the letters of Sullivan-Ballou. It was amazing. That is a very heavy set, folks. I'm not going to lie. It's like decollage, dense. It's a great set. I'll just mention another set that I think is worthy of, I don't know how you can get your hands on it these days unless you find them on eBay or 8 Books and find them used. But Alan Nevins back in the day wrote The Ordeal of the Union, which was an 8-volume set. So that's another set that it comes highly recommended. All right, moving on to question 4. What is the best book about slavery that you have read? I have mentioned this book before. It's not what you would consider an orthodox history of slavery. It kind of comes at it from an economic standpoint, but I think it makes its point in a startling way via the economics of it, because it shows just how much greed drove the engines of this monstrous institution, and that it was not relegated just to the South. The North was just as greedy as the South was, especially New York City. And this is Cotton and Race in the Making of America. The Human Costs of Economic Power by Jean Daddle. This was fantastic. I'm going to say I was assigned a couple of chapters to read from this book for a class I was taking. After I read those chapters that were broken up, I was just like, I'm reading this entire book. This is fascinating. And I've mentioned this book before on this channel, I think for like top 10s or, just fabulous books. And this one was amazing. It really opened my eyes, um, just to the economic engine, which just steamrolled people and underneath it. It was horrific, but at the same time very instructive in the data points that he includes in here, and talks about how the mass um, the mass wave of the movement of slavery down into the cotton states, because cotton, once they realized that cotton was such a lucrative crop, sure, tobacco and sugar and everything else, rice, made money, but nothing on the level of cotton, and which was in such high demand worldwide that it basically restarted up the slave trade, or at least made the slave holders decide to um, just keep bringing in more slaves and moving them around, selling and trading. It was just horrible, and it was all because of the dollar signs they saw revolving around the cotton crop. So anyway, this was a fantastic book. Um, I recently got a book, and I haven't read yet, but it's on my list of books to read um, around slavery. It's been on my shelf, and I do want to take a look at it. Is the problem of slavery in the Age of Emancipation by David Bryan Davis. So again, I don't have much to say because I haven't read this yet, but I think it's just gonna kind of make a nice complement to this other book that I've just showed you, the cotton aspect. So the problem of slavery is on my list. Okay, next question. What is the best book about Abraham Lincoln that you have ever read? You know, I was just going to say there are too many to name, because there really are. I know that's an easy out. Um, I will say, and I do have that book. I think it's right over. Yeah, I'm looking right at it, but it's across the way. Team of Rivals by Doris Kearns Goodwin. Loved it. Just absolutely loved it. So it's not only about Lincoln, but about his cabinet. Um, there's been great, biographies of the man alone. I mean, you've got how many people? They say that the two most written about people in the world were Jesus Christ and Abraham Lincoln, I think. And so there's just hundreds of thousands of books written about the man.
Can I put in a vote?
Yes, put in a vote.
For Lincoln's Melancholy.
Oh, I was going to mention that.
Yeah, I love that book.
Lincoln's Melancholy. I did read that. Who's the author?
Joshua Wolf Schenck.
Joshua Wolf Schenck, Lincoln's Melancholy. I did read that book. You're right. I don't know. It's in storage somewhere.
I've got it, yeah.
You got it too.
Yeah.
Yes. A lot of people have pointed out that they think his melancholy was hand in hand with his genius. And many geniuses are melancholic people. So that was a very moving portrait of Lincoln. So I'll leave that there for now. I know I have another book here that is kind of a companion piece. I'll just show it right now. But it's James McPherson's, who wrote The Battle Cry of Freedom, his Tried by War, Abraham Lincoln as Commander-in-Chief. So this is a very small volume, which I have not read yet, but I plan to. It's a book club edition. You know how I feel about that, you guys. There's that stupid number. It's just because the pages are already yellowed. I hate that. I'm picky. I'm a picky book person. But that's not the last of James McPherson we're going to see anyway. Let's move on to... Oh, it leads into this next question. Question 6. What is the best book about Jefferson Davis that you have ever read? All right, well, that I have read would be books that include him in the overall narrative. I don't think until very recently was there a biography written on him that stood out to me. So this is also on my shelf, and these actually need to be side by side because I realize he wrote these meaning them as a set. But again, it's James McPherson. and he wrote Embattled Rebel, Jefferson Davis as Commander-in-Chief. So it's the same type of setup here. Abraham Lincoln as Commander-in-Chief, and then Embattled Rebel, Jefferson Davis as Commander-in-Chief. So it's not a huge book, so I wouldn't call it an in-depth biography. And it's really only like 250 pages. And it would only focus on his aspect of a military, like a commander-in-chief in the time of war. So if you guys have any recommendations for a good one-volume biography on Jefferson Davis, let me know. I have to admit, I'm very ambivalent about reading this guy. I mean, I want to understand him. At the same time, I can't abide him. Oh, I think he was just the worst. But that didn't stop me from purchasing these 2 volumes when I was doing my thesis, for my senior thesis. And I just decided, I was looking for primary documents and anything that I could find that related to what was going on in 1864 in Virginia, with Grant moving south and all that kind of stuff. So this is a 2-volume. He wrote this while he was, I think he started writing it when he was imprisoned or right after. Again, I don't know why this man was ever set free. I don't understand it at all. But this is Jefferson Davis's, there's volume 1, The Rise and Fall of the Confederate Government. And look at that, new foreword by James McPherson. He's all over the place. He's our foremost Civil War historian, I believe, of the time. So many of them, so many great ones. Gary Gallagher is another that comes to mind, William C. Davis. But, I was like, well, why not? Let's just, see how this guy tries to make the case for what they did for seceding. And all this turgid prose, because it is turgid. I have skimmed through here, and I was just like, oh my god. Oh my god. No wonder people couldn't suffer his presence for very long. I just felt bad for Verena, his wife. Apparently she was a very pleasant, charming woman. And she was stuck with the stick in the mud here. Jefferson Davis, Volume 2, The Rise and Fall of the Confederate Government. So, I mean, he really, in his post-Civil War life, tried to, what do you say, exculpate himself, and tried to make the case that they were in the right for what the South did in seceding, and that he was right to become president of another nation. And but if you guys are ever interested, Da Capo Press puts out a nice 2-volume set on that. I think I bought these used, and they're in pretty good condition. So that's Jefferson Davis. Yeah. And actually I bought... No, I have a book that I want to read that is also about Jefferson Davis, but it ties it in with Napoleonic ideology. I'm pretty sure I showed this to you recently. It's on my shelf right over here. But no worries. Anyway, if anyone has any, again, suggestions for a good Jefferson Davis biography, please let me know in the comments below. All right, moving on. This is question 7. What is the best book about a Civil War general that you have ever read? Could be Union, Confederate, or both. Well, this is another book, along with Battle Cry of Freedom, that I don't have with me, and I wish I did. And I think it's out of state somewhere, and it might be with my mom. So I might need to just get myself a copy again. But that was Stephen Sears's biography of General George McClellan. Let me get the full title for you. That book, along with Battle Cry of Freedom and the Civil War documentary, again, was one of those acting catalysts that pushed me deeper into the study of the Civil War, because reading about George McClellan, I got so angry. And Sears did such a great job. Oh yes, George B. McClellan, The Young Napoleon, by Stephen W. Sears. I remember the book cover. It was just, he's on this artwork of him on a horse, and he just had such an elevated view of himself. He was so conceited. He was just an ass. He was just an ass. That was written in 1988. I can't say in his favor. The one good thing that George B. McClellan brought to the Union Army was that he trained the hell out of it, and that new army needed training, so he did bring that element to it. But he was not um, a good tactical commander. He just didn't have the spine for it. He was always inflating Lee's numbers. He was always assuming they had like 200,000 men, when really the Union was always outnumbering the Southerners. So it was just this constant refrain. I don't have enough men to go into battle. I don't, and Lincoln had it with him. He's like, give me a general who will fight. You know, but George B. McClellan, The Young Napoleon, is a fabulous read. I highly recommend any work by Stephen W. Sears. I also enjoyed his book. Well, that's coming up in the next question, so I'll leave that there. But yeah, General McClellan is a remarkable, remarkable book. And of course, I would say something about Grant. So many great Grant biographies. I actually enjoyed a very slim volume by, I think it's Joan Waugh, I think. Hang on a second. Joan Waugh, U.S. Grant. That was fabulous. I'm embarrassed to say I have not read the. Wait a second. Yeah, I have not read Chernow's biography yet. That's something I want to read this year. The Ron Chernow biography. A massive biography. It's right behind my head. As you can see it, there it is. Boom! That's my Grant section right there. I got H.W. Brands right here. He did a bio on him. I've got dual biographies of Grant and Lee. I will say that if you're going to read a biography on Grant, do not read William McFeely. He was so biased against Grant. It was like, I don't know what his issue was. Unfortunately, he and his wife were the ones who edited the Library of America version of Grant's memoirs. So, but he had a thing against Grant, and that was one of the first biographies I ever read. Luckily, it didn't color my own opinion of Grant. As I went along studying the Civil War, I was like, what is McFeely's deal? I mean, this guy was amazing. So even just being a newbie, I could see that the work was completely biased because I did not agree, as I continued my own studies into Grant, what McFeely was saying. He was going along with the whole Butcher Grant trope that's been completely, I think, if not completely, then nearly, dispensed with in the historical arena. Anyway, we're moving on to question 8. What are the top 3 books about battles and or campaigns that you have ever read? I have showed these books before. There are upstairs, but for my thesis, I was writing on the Overland Campaign, and I am working my way through a set of books. I think it's five volumes by Gordon C. Ray, RHEA, and it's the Overland Campaign. I'm on the 3rd volume, which covers the North Anna River, and then there's Cold Harbor, or is it a 4-volume set? Might be 4 volumes. I just need the last volume, which is Cold Harbor to Petersburg, I think. So we'll see. Another great campaign book that I've read, and I think it is in storage, but it's Noah Andrew Trudeau, his book on Gettysburg. That was amazing. I have the latest book on Gettysburg by Alan Gelso, and that's another one I want to read. I've read so many Gettysburg books, and I usually space them out. Like every few years, I'll be like, okay, I want to read about Gettysburg all over again. And I try to, I read a new book. But the last one I read on Gettysburg was Noah Andrew Trudeau, and his book was fantastic. And then coming back again to Stephen W. Sears is his classic book on Antietam, the Battle of Antietam, and that is Landscape Painted Red. So as you can see, these are all Civil War choices. Oh wait, because this is a Civil War book tag. I'm getting confused.
Why am I so in the weeds with the Civil War?
Yeah, why am I talking about the Civil War so much? You know, guys, I don't even know what day it is half the time, so please forgive me. All right, I already lost the thread. 8 questions in, I didn't even know what type of book tag I was doing.
8 questions in isn't bad.
I'm like, well, what about the Chosin Reservoir? What about the Korean War? What about these other battles I really enjoyed reading about? Okay, no. Question number 9. You think I would have an answer for this one? I don't right now. And I'll probably kick myself later and be like, oh, I know what book. I don't have it. It's what is the best book about an event or events after the American Civil War? So, I like reading about the veterans after the Civil War and what they did, but I can't really point to one individual book that kind of encompasses a bunch of different portraits. I think there's a couple of books coming out this summer that I've had my eye on at the publisher. I think it's Savas Beatty. They make a lot of they put out a lot of Civil War books. Um, just about like what happened to them after the Civil War. Yeah, there's a book coming back to me now, and I can't remember it right now, but I will. I'll bring it up in the next video.
I like the one about Lincoln's descendants.
Oh, The Last of the Lincolns. I have not read that yet,
that
though.
Isn't really.
Well, it's after the Civil War.
Yeah.
There's a book out there that covers the last of the Lincolns, that there were descendants. You know, people forget that Robert Todd Lincoln went on to become I think he was Secretary of War for another president, or yeah, and he had children. His children had children, um, and it just follows the whole line. I think, and I don't know if they're still going today or not. I don't know. I'll have to look into that. If you guys know, let me know. But I'm still looking for the most fantastic book that covers the events after the American Civil War. I mean, there's a lot of books on Reconstruction. I mean, I guess I could have taken it. Yeah, I guess I should have pulled out a book on Reconstruction. Oh, shoot. Well, Eric Foner is a fabulous historian who has written tons of books on Reconstruction. I think Alan Gelzo also has a brand new book out. I think it's a brief overview of the Reconstruction, so it's not a huge book. So anything having to do with the Reconstruction era, I would point to as anything by Foner, Gelzo. Check it out. All right, so question 10. What are the best fiction books you have read about the American Civil War? Great question. I have read a lot of different historical fiction around the Civil War. I'm going to begin with, obviously, Michael Shara, The Killer Angels, which was fabulous. Just fabulous. And then, he had a son, Jeff Shara, and he's written multiple volumes on the Civil War, and they're really good. I also enjoy those as well. I enjoyed his other military fiction. He wrote The Frozen Hours, which was the most recent book by him. I have it in hardcover, and that was on the Korean War and the Battle of Chosin River or Chosin Reservoir, and that was amazing. So, and he's got a brand new book coming out, I think this month. I might have to support the man and buy that book in hardcover.
I think you told him you would.
I told him I would, and it's on Pearl Harbor. So Jeff Shara has a new book coming out. So he's a wonderfully engaged writer. I watched him on book TV as well.
Way cooler than Brad Thor.
Yeah, he's cooler than Brad Thor. Sure he is. Yes, and I have his recording on DVD. I enjoy. He's someone who's very passionate about what he does, and he answered my email. You can write him directly and go to his website and send him a note. He writes back to everybody. He's just a very personable man and very humble. And anyway, enjoy his books. But I have to say, the biggest discovery for me, I started with his books. He had a pseudonym, right? He wrote it under pseudonym for a while. It was under Owen Perry was the name. Faded Coat of Blue. And it was about a Welsh Union soldier who they kind of revolved around mysteries. Like he would be sent to solve a mystery about a questionable death in the army or whatever. And I can't remember what the character's name was. I think it was Abel something. Uh, so the author was Owen Perry. Well, come to find out later that that was a pseudonym for Ralph Peters. And he has got a huge, very recent oeuvre of work, which is fantastic. It's right behind me. I'm going to grab it. Hang on. His first book was Cain at Gettysburg. I don't know where I put that book, but I need to have it because I have all of his other books in a line down below on my shelf. The next book in the series, well, they're not. They don't follow a certain person, but they follow the events of the Civil War. We've got Hell or Richmond. He is fabulous, and you might see Ralph Peters. He's been on CNN a time or two. he's a.
Oh, you like him?
I like him. He's an ex-military guy. He doesn't pull any punches. He's awesome. The next one was Valley of the Shadow. As you can see here, that book list said he's one of the great this is one of the great Civil War novels of our time. But he's been getting great press for this series of books, and he's got a brand new one out. Hang on, let me get two more. If you really want to get lost in some Civil War novels, check out Ralph Peters. Start with Cain at Gettysburg, Hell or Richmond, The Valley of the Shadow. Then you have The Damned of Petersburg. All right. And then you have Judgment at Appomattox. And that's where I thought the series would end. I'm like, okay, I guess he's done. And I was like, bummer. No! He decided to write about Chancellorsville, the Battle of Chancellorsville. So he's going back a little bit in time. And I think it's called Darkness at Chancellorsville because that's where Stonewall Jackson was shot. And people believe that if that hadn't have happened, that maybe the war would have had a different outcome. So, yeah, so that's the other book I need to get. I haven't gotten that one yet. Maybe I'll buy it for myself for my birthday next month. Darkness at Chancellorsville.
Birthday's next month.
My birthday's next month. Yeah. Oops, get on it. Just kidding. She already did. So yeah, those are some books. We've got Michael Shara, Jeff Shara, Ralph Peters. You could also check out his older series under the pseudonym Owen Perry. Oh my God, we're at 33 minutes. Let me wind this up. It's a bonus question. Oh, and any other book you want to mention about the American Civil War? I had written down here, yes?
Oh, no, just historical fiction, vote for Abraham Lincoln, Vampire Hunter.
Okay, Abraham Lincoln, Vampire Hunter. That's Martine's choice. Geez, what other books could I mention? You know, guys, there's so many. All I can do is encourage you, if you even have an inkling of curiosity about the Civil War, check out any of these. Check out something on your own, but just check it out because it really was a pivotal event in our history, and you can understand a lot about today from what happened then. And it's always good to remember what people sacrificed and that people lived through hellacious times more than we can ever imagine. We're going through a tough time right now, but it's my firm belief that it is nothing compared to what people have gone through in the Civil War, World War I in Europe, World War II. So let's just keep things in perspective and, just remember those who came before. And the Civil War to me is, it's unendingly fascinating. So that's my passion. I hope it might become your passion. Anyway, guys, I guess I'll wrap it up there. It's been a long video. I hope you've enjoyed my Civil War books. This was an older tag. I know that Bill tagged, I think, Steve Donoghue. So, Steve, if you haven't done it yet, I tagging you again. You may have already done it, but I don't know. I'm pretty good about keeping up on your videos. So, um, Civil War book tag. Anyone else who would like to do this, who has read several books and can answer these questions in any form, even if you can only answer one or two, let's join in. Why not? Thanks, Bill, for tagging me. This was great fun. It makes me want to dive back into some of these books again and just rediscover that sense of fascination that I started so long ago. It just takes me back. So anyway, I really had a lot of fun with this. Thanks, Bill. Thanks, BookTube. I'll be talking to you soon. Bye.